So, in the short amount of time that we have, and by the way, I'd like to ideally make it 20 minutes. TED Talks has informed us that 20 minutes is plenty of time in which to present. And that would leave then 10 minutes of questions maybe at the end. So I wonder if I could have a volunteer for somebody to tell me when it's 20 minutes after 2. Okay. Judy, thank you. Okay, great. I'm going to do 3 things, hopefully, all 3 in this 20 minutes. First, very quickly, I'm going to just recount what it was that Frank Pratt did around here. Secondly, given that he did these things and he was kind of unusual in the way he went about it and did it, how did that happen? You know, where did he come from? Where did Frank Pratt come from? What kind of community was he in? What kind of family? That sort of thing. And then thirdly, where is all this in history? I did a literature review of some of the more prominent books in our community about Coopville and Central Whitby history, and I want to relate those results to you with maybe a suggestion along with it, a question. Okay, well, to begin, we have the accomplishments. I'll put on so I already got that hat on. I'm going to put on the reserve hat for this. What I'm going to talk about just briefly is the land and structures preservation things that Frank Pratt did. And most of you already fully know about this, and so we'll make it quick. We have the Ferry House, we have the Jacob Beebe House, we have the Jenny Farm, which was through the family. We have the land associated with those. We have a block house that's with the Jacob Beebe House. Have I missed anything about the main structures and lands that he preserved? Okay, basically we're talking about the heart of Beebe's Landing National Historic Reserve. It's really kind of the rim areas of the prairie is what he was mostly involved with. And so that's kind of the facts of the situation. And then a couple things about the way he went about doing what he was doing. He had the wealth and wherewithal and the interest to put money and energy into preserving these things. But he did a couple of other things too that so far have not been talked about too much that I know about. One is that he set the stage for the later reserve design review standards. All of the new structures that he built were unobtrusive. They blended with the prairie. They nestled in. They were, in some cases, not that observable. Like the hilltop where he built his house is not really seen that much. It kind of peeks over the ledge that he's on there, which he referred to as his hilltop. Same thing for the couple of barns that he built. He built a couple good-sized barns, and those were unobtrusive and nestled in. The third thing he did was he permitted agriculture to continue in Central Whitby. He kept that tradition, either raising sheep himself and that sort of thing, or leasing the land to farmers, and that's an area I'd like to find out more about, maybe from you, Roger, about how he went about that, and what the farmer review of what he did was. Okay, so now Frank Pratt is going for a walk across the land up near his property, and this is his motoring hat, by the way. That's all he can find this morning. Anyway, and he's walking across this land, and he encounters a hunter, and says, "Yeah, how's the hunting?" Oh, yeah, it's, it could be better, but it's going to happen. They're up here. But I enjoy walking around these parts. And, yeah, say, mister, you're not from around here, are you? And I'm not one to really say too much about that because I'm not too much around here either. I'm here part-time visiting relatives, and I like to hunt and this beautiful countryside to walk around in. Where are you from? Well, you're right. I'm not from around here, but I am now. And where I come from is, well, it's a long ways away. Massachusetts. Do you know very much about Massachusetts? Yeah, I didn't think so. Well, it's kind of rectangular, and Boston's up here, and Cape Cod's down here with a little hook on it and stuff. Well, just to orient you, I'm from a community that's about halfway across Massachusetts, maybe a little bit more to the west, and then up a little bit to the north. And that's an area that's kind of like this. It has a lot of hills, and there's river valleys there instead of glacial valleys and all this water that we have in the Sound. But a lot of rivers, and so that made that area kind of special. A lot of folks came to that area after Plymouth Rock and looking for places to settle. And the attraction there was water power initially, and the rivers really weren't that navigable. They were more suited for water, building dams, aqueducts, and then have water wheels and that sort of thing to power machinery. That was its forte. And I was born in Shelburne, by the way, Shelburne Falls. That's just a little bit to the west of Greenfield that I'd like to tell you most about. Shelburne Falls is one of those water power kind of communities. And I just happened to have some pictures of it. I was up here, I was going to write the folks back home, and we've been exchanging photographs and all lately. And so I just happened to have what they call a bird's eye view of Shelburne Falls. And it shows the Deerfield River, and shows the dam, the factories, and just kind of the layout of the town and so forth. And that's real typical of where I'm from. And so really, this place reminds me so much of it. Just to the east of Shelburne Falls is Greenfield, Massachusetts, and that's mostly where I lived and grew up. Was there in my later years. My dad actually worked in the family business of tool making in Shelburne Falls, and from there went to New York City for several years, and then from there to New Orleans. And don't ask me everything he did. I mean, he dressed much nicer than this, and I was a kid, and I really don't know too much about what he did in New York City and stuff. It was really different. But anyway, nevertheless, we all wound up back in Massachusetts in Greenfield, and we actually lived on Main Street in Greenfield, which is extremely historical. The street was laid out in 1686. That was when they first laid it out. And just like Shelburne Falls, they had water power and everything, and so the community did well. They were kind of wealthy, on the wealthy side, and prosperous, and things were booming. If you saw a railroad engine heading off across the countryside blowing smoke, it didn't look like pollution, it looked like prosperity. And so we were pretty happy there. Here's a picture of Main Street downtown, and that's the street that my folks lived on. That's where I grew up. It has a lot of trees, a lot of big houses, and it's also the commercial center. It was just down the street from us. Well, when we first went to Greenfield from New Orleans, we landed on Congress Street, which runs right into Main Street, and you can see the house that we had in this picture. I've highlighted it a little bit, just so the folks back home wanted to make sure that I remembered which house that was, and so they highlighted it for me. Okay, well, that's where we started, and then from there, we moved onto Main Street, and we didn't just have one house; we had two houses, and they were big. They were right next to the government offices, the public library. The Unitarian Church was just right across the street, along with the public library across Main Street. And that's mostly where we lived. And then we moved one more time, and it was even closer to the old government buildings and stuff. So anyway, that's the community that I feel most a part of, and along with others in the area. Have you ever heard of Miller's Falls? You know, that's Miller's Falls Tools that are pretty well known, and my family's tool business was bought out by them. Now I say my family, but really it was my cousin. It wasn't so much my dad and myself. It was my cousin William M. Pratt, and when they were, here it is, 1936 now, and back in 1912 and around in there, that was the heyday for the good old Pratt Tool Company. This advertisement from them cites 1,500 tools. They were pretty big, and they were right in Greenfield, too, right close to the downtown, actually. They had a factory right on the railroad. That's what made the difference. So you had water power and you had railroads. That's what drove things around there. So, yeah, that's my background. Probably told you more than you wanted to know, but it helps you understand kind of what I see around here. And by the way, if you ever get a chance, stop by the house, and I've got a triple-barreled shotgun I want to show you that my son Robert uses. Okay, so that's the end of the role-playing dress up, and now back to modern times. Okay, so that gives you a little bit of background on Frank Pratt himself. That essentially what it says is he knew what he was looking at, and he had the historical background for being able to put it all in context, and he really helped, I think, set the stage for what would happen later around here, but kind of quiet, kind of quiet on the QT, maybe with a few rumors thrown in about, who he was, the family, and so forth. So, I was curious after studying all this to see, well, what's the take that the community has on what he did? And so I consulted several historic books around here. Jimmy Jean Cook doesn't say a lot about him. He's in there twice, briefly, and he got some kind of a gold star for being considerate on the switchboard telephone system, along with the local sheriff. That kind of thing. Really, really minor stuff. He was also cited for having his Cadillac on the island for the summer, and this was a 38 horsepower Cadillac that he's always known to have them. And that was the other thing. And then you have Richard White's land use, environment, and social change, or something like that. His title always throws me. It was a master's thesis turned into a book, and he hardly mentions him. He has this chapter in there called Urban Shadow, which was just perfect for mentioning Frank Pratt. And he kind of did, but it was with no recognition at all. The best outfit around here to do a good job on Frank Pratt is Judy Lynn and Kay Foss. There's a chapter in there called Boosting the Community, and one whole page is devoted to the Pratts in that book. That's the pictorial book for Coopville. So the area kind of falls short, and so anyway, look at these pictures of his house. These are in two stages. One was kind of the second stage of house building. It's not the smallest cabin that he had up there that he lived in. It's the second. And then after that came the third construction up there on the hill. And that one essentially doubled the size of the whole thing and made the house symmetrical. And anyways, it's very nicely situated, as I mentioned. And I think you'll like the materials that he built it of, and just the general bungalow cabiny kind of design of it. And here's a picture of the gentleman right here, about the time of 1936. So I want to just summarize by saying that it seems like an awful lot went on with the Pratts that somehow didn't get recognized over time, and you know, I think we could say that he, in some ways, in a private sort of way, set the stage for the Historic Reserve. The Historic Reserve is largely a public operation. He kind of did a lot of that, but it was, of course, done completely privately. And one local person that I talked to down there in the waterfront this summer, I asked him about Frank Pratt, and he said, well, you know, he was kind of different. He was an individualist. So that might be one of the best ways to put it, but he was an informed individualist, which I hope you can see somewhat from the background that I've given you today. Okay. So from here, maybe, yeah, we'll have 10 minutes of questions, and then if we still have time, Judy, how are we doing on time?
I'm sorry, it's 19 after. You have one more minute.
Actually, this whole thing was a plot for me to blab all about the Pratts. Anyway, let's have two questions, and then we'll be available for those who still can stay warm enough to talk informally afterwards, and maybe kind of meet some different people and that sort of thing. Yeah, Tony?
Did he ever work?
That's a good question. One of the things I was looking to find an answer to, because definitely he came from family of means, and in a lot of ways he didn't have to. One of the things I forgot to tell you was he graduated from Amherst College in 1886 with a degree that set the stage for him becoming an attorney, which he rapidly did under good tutorship, is that what you call it? Anyway, he was in good hands in the community to become a good lawyer. Well, he was starting to do that, and then his friend Robert Lansing, a friend from the college, same class, got an assignment from the president to head up to the Bering Sea area of Alaska and negotiate a treaty, because we were having problems among the nations up there about where the boundaries were and what people could do in the way of fishing and hunting and so on. And so Frank Pratt Jr. first came west with Robert Lansing, and then he got hung up in Seattle. He was an attorney there. He did work, and he was admitted to the Bar of Washington in 1887. And then he got, boy, here we go. Then he got into the Spanish-American War. There was a wave of patriotism sweeping the country and whatnot. He joined the 1st Regiment, Company K, of the Washington Volunteers, and went to the Philippines. We have pictures of that. Yeah. Ron has pictures of that, of the destruction that he saw in the Philippines as a result of that. Okay, well, he came back from that. That was pretty short-lived, but they did have 6 months of hard fighting in the Philippines. He came back from that, went to LeConner from Seattle, and set up a little bit of a practice from there, and then came to the island seasonally, started buying land in 1901, and started slowly building. And so he was first seasonal and then full-time, and he was just totally sold on the place. And to get back to your question of did he work, when he moved here, there is one comment in the letters from Lena, his wife, that to somebody else, that they thought that he could do just about as well working from the island as he could do from Seattle in LeConner. So he was in international law, same as his friend Robert Lansing. You know, this has to do with treaties and trade considerations and stuff like that internationally.
What do you recall what year he passed the bar?
Well, yeah.
98?
Let's see. Yeah, 1880. Let me think. 9 maybe. No, he was. Oh gosh, no, it was not 18. Let me think.
Well, the comment I made.
Yeah, it was something like
The
1889.
only comment I'll make.
Yeah,
is that
that's about when he graduated.
I saw a passport that
Yeah.
he had from. It was exactly 10 years. So from the time he passed the bar, and it said on it, retired lawyer.
Mm.
And that was in his handwriting.
Mm.
So I found that. That's why I asked you, did
Yeah.
it really work?
Well, I think he continued to work a little bit. He made a trip to Mexico and South America in connection with his work. That's in the literature. But I honestly can't see at this point that he worked a lot.
Yeah.
He didn't have to.
Didn't need to.
He did other things. You know, he really was a patron of the arts and history and. Yeah, maybe one more question.
Where did he get his money?
Okay, well, yeah,
Judy
that's.
and Ron have addressed that, but I went.
Yeah, where did he get his money? When I was doing the Suva research, the schooner Suva, at that time, I thought it was completely from tools, and you know, I passed around that tool catalog. I mean, that was a big part of what the family did. His great grandfather was the first one, so there were 3 generations of Pratt tool builders in the Shelburne Falls and Greenfield, Massachusetts area primarily, and they bought up a bunch of other companies, including New York, about tools. Well, so part of the family made a whole lot of money from that. I'm not convinced that he necessarily got his money from them. He may have, but the really interesting thing was that his father, Frank Pratt Sr., went to New York after working for his father in tool making, drop forge, axe making mostly, in Shelburne Falls. He went to New York, and the one write-up I've seen is just real brief, and that's that he was in the hardware business. Well, that doesn't tell you a whole lot, and I never found anything else about what he did up there. But Ron has a photograph of Frank Pratt Sr. together with another gentleman by the name of Week, and I don't know exactly who he was, kind of talking at Niagara Falls. It's a beautiful photograph. Niagara Falls is spilling over. It's right at the high point of it and everything at the falls. And they just look like a couple fat cats from New York, let me tell you. They are dressed to the hilt. They are a little bit, you know, they have the bulges in the right places, everything. And cigars. I mean, you know, he was something. And now the trick will be to find out what did he do in New York and later in New Orleans.
He was on the board. He was on the board. Some of the fine art in New York City. He was actually a board member on. I want to say the ballet commission, but of course it wasn't the ballet commission.
Oh, so he was into the arts and everything
and
too.
I just didn't understand. I don't really geography-wise. I don't understand how far he would be traveling because I kept seeing him in Massachusetts, but. At some point in time, he was on a couple boards. Yeah,
let me explain that Tony actually got into the history before I did. He got access to all the digital copies of the documents that Ron has made available to us. And read, I guess, a whole lot of that, and that was before I did, and then the Suva
I'm
came
sorry,
along,
after
and
you
that's
remembered yours, I forgot almost all of them.
well, I probably invented some too. So I want somebody to keep me honest as well. All right?
Come home.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's probably good for now, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of time and warmth left in our bodies to visit a little bit here and have a little hot cider. Thank you for coming. Thanks so much.